Hey, DC Universe fans, got ToyGuru Neitlich back as your host on the Spectre Creative channel, where in this series, this playlist, we're going wave by wave, talking about the DC Universe Classics 6-inch action figure line from Mattel, which ran from 2008 through about 2016-ish. I was there for about 95% of the original waves before it became multiverse, and that's why I'm providing commentary. See how that works? I worked on the line, and then I talk about the line. All right, so wave 14 is where we are, deep into the 75th. So as a roll call, we're talking about Zatana and the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, although he was just called Green Lantern on package, but we all know who he is. Todd Rice, a.k.a. Obsidian, a guy who didn't get his name on package, so we had to use his real name. We'll get into that. Kamandi, the last boy on Earth and the first time as an action figure. Then we had Gold, one of the Metal Men, as we continue to build the Metal Men team. And wrapping it up with the superhero who gets powers for 1 hour at a time, a.k.a. Our Man, aptly named. So that was Wave 14, plus an amazing Build-A-Figure of Ultra Humanite. And with that, let's go figure by figure like we usually do, because, we fear change. All right, Gold. Not actually made of gold, unfortunately, but shiny like gold. One of the Metal Men. I mean, really not too much to go into on him, other than the fact that we were making a very conscious effort to make all of the Metal Men. Bill Benecke, the lead designer on DCU Classics, was a huge fan of the Metal Men, so he made it a real priority to try to get to them, and we did. We did successfully in the end. It took the Signature series, but we finally got to all of them, minus their creator. But it's always great when you can have a full team in action figure form, because leaving a team sort of incomplete is kind of like a chess game unplayed or a book unread. And Gold came out great. Plus he gave us those great snap-on parts that we were able to use later on as Green Lantern attachments. It's always great when you have hand snap-on parts that you can recast in other colors for other figures. All right, next up we have Our Man. So this is a figure that goes all the way back to the Golden Age, but he was having kind of a renaissance of sorts in the sense that, one, he had an appearance on the Justice League Unlimited line, and you'll definitely hear me talk about that a lot, both in this video and other DC videos, because that cartoon show and the toy line had kind of just ended right when DCU Classics was starting, so there was a lot of, I wouldn't call it crossover, but that line and that TV series really introduced a lot of these second and third tier characters to popular culture, who otherwise may not have ever heard of them, who only ever heard of, say, Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and, the top tier characters. So this was not our first Our Man figure. We had done him in JLU style in a six-pack there. And he had obviously had a few different iterations of his costume over the years, from modern looks to classic looks to Golden Age looks, to wearing a hood, to wearing a cowl, to wearing a hood over a cowl. There's like all sorts of versions of his costume. And in the end, the Horseman and design kind of went with a not quite full Golden Age, but definitely kind of classic version of him with the full cowl, without kind of the hood over, and which translated like this. And I know a lot of fans were like, well, wait a minute, doesn't he have black over his eyes and on his forehead? That's kind of part of who he is. Well, that really only happens when he's got the hood. When the hood creates shadow over his cowl. When he just has the cowl, it's all yellow, at least officially according to our great partners at Warner Brothers and DC. It's only, painted on as a shadow if there is actually a hood on the figure. In hindsight, I think we could have come up with a better solution than what we did. We didn't paint the shadow because the shadow's only there with the hood, but I love what Marvel Legends did with Moon Knight recently, a Walgreens figure where they basically gave you both versions, with a shadow over the face and without, so you could switch them. And I definitely feel like we should have done this with Our Man. It would have made a lot of fans happy, and I regret that we didn't, but still came out great, had that dangling hourglass necklace, and he's Our Man. All right, next up we have Obsidian, who is the son of the original Green Lantern. See, there you get a connection in the line. Now, the word Obsidian as a toy was already taken, so he had to be called Todd Rice on package. You can see my trademarking video for more about that. He also had an appearance on the JLU cartoon, which sort of reintroduced him to mainstream pop culture. But the action figure version was definitely more the 80s classic retro version where you actually saw his smile. And I think a big part of this, the Horsemen are very, very knowledgeable about toy history. And they knew that if Obsidian had been in the Superpowers line, he was planned for that. Courtesy of Action Figure Insider, I want to give full credit for this image. This was the artwork developed for Superpowers, so it would have had that smile and the eyes. And that's why Obsidian looks like that in the DCU Classics form. And, I really love that the Horsemen did something like that. All right, Kamandi. Next up, we have Kamandi. Now, this is a very special figure to me in particular because this was kind of a gift to me from Warner Brothers. The Warner Brothers executives, and this is not them, I just Googled happy executives, were very happy with the way I've been treating the brand. I think it's kind of rare to have a brand manager that is also a huge fan of both the toy line and the original content, DC Comics. So they basically gave me a slot with no strings attached, meaning I could choose a figure that I wanted, and no matter how much tooling that figure took, or kind of how wacky that figure was, they were going to approve it. It was kind of like one slot as a thank you for the years I had spent running DC Universe Classics and the hard work I'd put into it, kind of above and beyond, since as a fan I was really promoting it. So, of all the figures in the entire DC Universe, I went with Kamandi, the last boy on Earth. Now, why Kamandi? Well, a big reason is he never had an action figure before, ever. And actually still hasn't. This is his only action figure. And to me, that's what DC Universe Classics was kind of all about, was breaking new ground. And also, there's a particular way that I got into the Kamandi series by Jack Kirby. It's a very interesting series because it's a world of its own, and each issue just kind of spills into the next in a post-apocalyptic world where animals rule the planet and is not Planet of the Apes. Because there's, tigers and bears and lions and tigers and giraffes, oh my. So the reason I got into this was because of my favorite comic book, Savage Dragon. I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast before. And a couple of years back, actually got this like a decade back now, Eric Larson did a homage to Kamandi in Savage Dragon. He did about a 25, 30 issue, give or take, homage to Kamandi, where Savage Dragon winds up in a post-apocalyptic world, and Eric talked a lot about how Kamandi was his favorite comic book growing up, besides Incredible Hulk, and this was a direct homage to that. And I mean, you can see that not only in the art, but even in the designs of the characters and the cover layouts, and I mean, it was really cool. It was a very, very different take on the Savage Dragon character, and it absolutely inspired me to pick up Kamandi and read it cover to cover. Luckily, they had those beautiful omnibuses. So, yeah, basically Savage Dragon got me into Kamandi, and my being into Kamandi got you all a Kamandi action figure. So, hey, there you go. Stranger things have happened. It really is an amazing comic book, and if you haven't picked it up, it's one of Jack Kirby's best. I definitely highly recommend it. It's a all-inclusive story, and it just works. And he's an awesome figure, and it's great to have a character who's never been a toy before done in action figure form. Came with lots of cool guns too, and those great ripped Daisy Duke shorts. Okay, speaking of Zatana, yeah, she's definitely she's got my magic. So she is a magician character from the DC universe, and her origins actually go all the way back to the origins of DC with Action Comics #1. You're probably saying, wait a minute, that's Superman's first issue. I know that. I mean, everybody knows Action Comics was Superman's first issue. Well, yes, that's true. Superman made his first appearance in Action Comics #1. I'm not disputing that. But it also was the first appearance of Zatara, the Master Magician. And Zatara was the father of Zatana. So, her origins, in a way, go back to Action Comics #1. And, yeah, I mean, Action Comics wasn't limited to one superhero or one story. It had, I think, actually about 5, I want to say, short stories in it. I'd have to go check. I have a repro of it that I got from Loot Crate a few years back. But yeah, Zatara the Masked Magician was a big character in Action Comics for quite a while, and eventually his prodigy, his daughter, Zatana, went on to become a big part of the DC Universe. And yeah, what can I say? She's a sexy magician. I'll just say it right now. I mean, pulling rabbits out of hats and magical spells and, the whole Doctor Strange, Harry Potter thing. I mean, if you like magician characters. She also, again, JLU, as well as Batman the Animated Series. She actually made appearances way back in the original Bruce Timm series, so she has a lot of history with that animated series that had wrapped up. And doing her as a figure was, a bit of tooling. She needed a new chest that was going to incorporate the bow tie and the jacket, and she also had the real stockings, just like Black Canary. One of the really cool things, though, that I thought the Horseman and Bill did from a development and design standpoint was her removable hat. So she had a hat that had a little lip, and you could remove the hat, and she had she came with a traditional magic wand, which is always an awesome accessory. And this basically gave her a lot of really cool posing ability, I guess you could say. And really, that's what action figures for adult collectors are all about. And yes, I know kids needed to buy this too to support it at retail, but from an adult collector standpoint, she was definitely designed for some cool poses, and I'm glad the hat was removable. It really helped with that. All right, next up, we have our token superpowers character, Tyr, the guy with the big yellow arm cannon thing. So, yeah, definitely an obscure character as far as DC Universe, but he was a superpowers figure. And as I've mentioned in multiple videos, superpowers was a big priority for us. And, being the inspiration for DCU Classics. So getting to all the figures and superpowers was something we were deliberately trying to do. Plus, hey, now you had, more villains for Legion of Superheroes, right? Along with Validus in a couple waves, so hey, always good to have villains for that giant 12-pack that you just bought, or at least just watched a video of. And yeah, I mean, looking at a lot of those superpowers figures, I wouldn't call them weird. Okay, they're weird, but, they're not as recognizable. But they are all very toyetic in the sense that they have colors and features that just look like toys and just look like action figures. I mean, come on, a guy with a red skin and a mohawk and a giant yellow arm cannon. What young boy does that not appeal to? Now, there was a running change to him. This is a perfect example of a running change where the first batch, the red skin wasn't right, so we had to make a change, but because the first batch was done, a good chunk of them made it out to market. You can see my video on running changes to kind of understand how that worked. So, yep, there you go. That's why there were two different skin colors on him. Running change. All right, so wrapping up the basic figures, the last figure for the wave was Alan Scott, a.k.a. Green Lantern, a.k.a. the original Green Lantern. And, oh man, I love Alan Scott. I think his costume is just, I don't know, it's awesome. I'm a big Green Lantern fan, and obviously he's a very different kind of Green Lantern. He was sort of retconned to fit in with the whole Oa, Lantern continuity, and his construct's a little bit more, shall we say, on fire. But it's like, why is this Green Lantern different from all others? The rest of them are in green cop suits, and he's a little different. But that's because he goes back to the Golden Age, and he originally had a very different origin. But it's cool, and he fits in perfectly into the DC universe, and I'm really glad we got to do him in 6-inch. There was a little bit of pushback on his face sculpt. He was kind of like an angry head sculpt. And again, I kind of wish we could have done multiple heads on a lot of these figures. But, it is what it is, and I still think he looks great. And, he's ready to kick butt, and it's always good to have space heroes, because we've got so many superheroes that are, urban and earthbound, your Batman family, that anytime you can have intergalactic heroes, I just think that's awesome, because I like space. I like characters that can fight in outer space, and, he's also adds a lot of color to the Green Lantern shelf with that big red shirt. So, if you have a shelf of just Green Lantern heroes and Green Lantern villains, having Alan Scott on there really pops, if you will, and makes the shelf look like it's not just like the Emerald City and a bunch of characters standing around in green outfits, which Kind of is what a Green Lantern shelf should be, but that's not the point. All right, wrapping up the wave, we have the big gorilla in the room. There were a lot of big gorillas in DC Universe. In this case, it was a big white gorilla, a big albino gorilla with a giant brain. And I'm talking about none other than the Ultra Humanite. And again, wow. I mean, this is like, the Horsemen are just like so good at sculpting giant gorillas, right? I mean, it's the face and the arms and the hair. Now, there were, a couple different versions of him over the years, but he does really have that classic look with the red spiked vest, with the white hair. There was one time when he shaved his head, which I thought was really crazy. I think that was in a Booster Gold comic book. But of course, it being DCU Classics, went with the very classic look, full head of hair and red kind of Kirby-esque armor, if you will. And he was a figure we'd actually done before, which is strange because he's kind of an obscure villain. But because he'd been in the JLU show, he had a JLU action figure, which was really cool because in my quest to get to all the major JLU figures, he was a character that was going to have to be fully tooled, or very, very highly tooled. But the fact that he was already done before my tenure was awesome because he was now off my plate, which meant I didn't have to be responsible for getting him to market in the JLU line. He was done, and he looked great, so I was really glad that he was released early in the kid line so that I didn't have to do him. Maybe I could have done him in this Christmas special episode with the top hat. Could have borrowed that top hat from Zatana. Hey, there's a crossover. All right. So back to the DCU Classics version. So again, giant gorilla in the room. You can't go bad with a Build-A-Figure that's a giant angry white gorilla, although he has been confused over the years with characters like the Abominable Snowman, as well as, your token Star Wars Abominable Snowman, aka a Wampa, complete with 2 arms here. But as much as giant white apes are a big part of pop culture, he's a very smart one. His kind of thing is his brain. And man, that face sculpt. Boy, did the Horseman again, the teeth and the eyes. Whether they were looking at the JLU animated series or they were looking at his classic comic book appearances, he's Ultra Humanite. He had everything that made the character Ultra Humanite. Humanite? Is that a word? Did I just invent like a new verb? I think I did. I like inventing new verbs. I seem to do it a lot on this channel. All right. So that's the wave. There we go. Another great wave done. And for its ups and downs, it got a lot of great figures. Helped complete some teams, brought new characters who had never been toys before, and was a little magical. It was always great to work on these waves. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.